Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Release!
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott. Alongside, as always, hello, Scott.
Sean, what's up? Long time.
Yeah, you were not here last week. I don't know if you listened to the show, but I told everybody that you were off doing your forensic accounting of your bar bill. Did you figure out why it was higher this year?
Yeah, it was because I actually stayed this year instead of going home when the game was over, as I had been wont to do the last couple of years. But out of that haze, I love my spreadsheets and all that. So back out of it. Looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, we are here in the summer, as we always are, talking about some curling. I am very excited about this episode, Scott, because we don't get too much into the technical side of the sport too often. We did a little bit after the 2021 Canadian Olympic trials, where did a bit of an analysis of Jennifer Jones's final shot in the 10th end and the idea of the soft release, which is why that one over curled. We talked about a little bit what a soft release is.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about how many fewer rotations. It worked out to about 3/4 less of a rotation on the stone as it went down the ice, causing the over curl that she missed. But we don't really talk too much about the technical side of making shots very often. We just talk about, hey, I made this shot, I missed this shot. We don't really talk too much about why. So I have 7 key factors in making a shot, and we're going to go through them and figure out which one perhaps is the most important in terms of making a shot, all the way down to the least important one. And I will preface this by saying, I think all 7 of these are important and greatly contribute to making a shot. So we'll have that as the caveat as we go through and rank these. And Scott, as somebody, both of us, who have missed plenty of shots in our day, what do you think is the primary factor behind a miss?
Well, there's lots of reasons I've missed shots in my day, but there's sometimes it's a physical thing, sometimes it's a mental thing. For the majority of rec curlers, I would say it's more likely a physical thing than a mental thing. If you're going out once a week or twice a week, you probably don't get psyched out by that many shots. But maybe you're playing in the club championship and you're the only game on the ice, or everybody's gone off and everyone's watching you before the next draw goes out. So there's some mental aspects to missing those kinds of shots, but for the most part, physical. And I found that as I've trained more and been more comfortable with my body, that it's been a lot easier to make shots from the physical side. So then it shifts to be more of a mental focus.
Yeah, the more repetition you have, the more you play, the more consistent you're going to be on the physical side. And yeah, it becomes a mental thing. I said this a few months ago when I had that hit to sit 8, not to score 8, to sit 8. That's as nervous as I've ever been. My legs were shaking when I was going down to the other end. And that's something that, as a rec player, you don't really have any big shots ever. Like, even a draw to win the game isn't really a big shot. I mean, it can feel like a big shot. Yeah, you want to win the game, but ultimately it's not really for anything at the level we play. Certainly. So yeah, you can occasionally get a big one. Dean, our friend Dean on the scene, he had a draw to win the club championship and he made it. And he was, I think, the only game on the ice. But as he tells the story, there was a hockey game on the TV that was more compelling. So nobody was actually watching him make the shot. It's only the only other people who saw it and could confirm it are the 7 other people who were on the ice playing in the game. But even at that, it's kind of feels like a big moment. You want to make the shot.
Mhm.
So yeah, it can be that mental side to things, but I agree with you that for the most part at our level, it's going to be a physical thing that causes a miss, or potentially, this isn't necessarily a physical, but we'll get to it, the preparation side, which I guess is a mix of physical / strategy / whatever. So
Yeah.
let's get into it, Scott. These are in the order that I have them, in no particular order at all. So actually, no, let's go in order of the process of the shot.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
when
So
we talked about that.
yeah, so let's go through this way. So let's start with the ice. I think that's the first thing that comes in the process of the shot, is that the skip puts down the broom and determines what the ice is going to be for a
Well, Sean,
given shot.
I would backtrack from that and say the call itself, the type of shot called,
Right.
is an important part of the shot too. But maybe we're just gonna say that's up to the skip. That's not up to the player who's throwing necessarily. So we'll take that part out of the equation of it being successful. But I do think it is important to say that the skip should be calling the shot based on what they know about their player in
Mhm.
order to maximize the probability of success.
Yes, if it's possible to, right? I mean,
If
if you're
possible.
the lead and you're throwing the first stone of an end and you're better at hits, well, ain't nothing to throw at.
Yeah. You can try to hit the broom and put the right weight on it, but no takeouts possible.
Right. Yes, that is very true. Yes. So yeah, you want to try to, as best you can, cater to what your players are good at, and I guess maybe the ice fills in with that. You can have the Ben Hebert rule that you only play one turn over the course of your games, but I think the ice is a really important factor. And obviously, this is not on the thrower necessarily, unless it's the skip who is throwing. So Scott, you skip, you put the broom down for 6 shots before you go throw. And on the team that we currently play on, I would say that the 3 other players, myself being one of them, we all throw very differently.
Yes.
So Steph, our lead, she tends to let the rock go a little sooner than I do or Jesse does. I think I have a slightly less positive release than Jesse does. And but we both tend to release it around the same point, but the different release means I'm going to get a little less rotation than Jesse does, who's very positive. So Scott, as a skip, how do you figure out or try to figure out where to put down the broom, especially at the rec level where you have 8 players on the ice, all of whom probably throw differently and all of whom probably are doing it very inconsistently as well?
Yeah, I think the inconsistency is the hardest part, because it's easy to know generally that, yeah, okay, Sean's going to get a little less curl on his out turn because he tends to pop that a little bit of inside out, so it runs straighter. Or for Jesse, if he's throwing a peel or run back or something, I know to put the broom exactly where I want it to hit because he's probably not going to get any curl. With Steph, sometimes I'll give more ice on a certain turn than another, just based on the way that she throws. For me, it's the same thing. I when I'm icing myself, I know to give myself a little bit more than I would Jesse, but maybe a bit less than you. So
Right.
Those are all things that the skip can learn over the course of a season. But when it's inconsistent throughout a game, then it's basically impossible, right? Because you say, okay, make this hit, and you dumped it and it didn't curl, and then the next one you put the broom further out and you throw it good and it over curls, or like, it's just that's pretty tough. But at the beginning of the game, I sort of have a general, I'll put the broom just maybe inside the edge of the 8 foot for a center line guard. So assume about 3.5 to 4 feet of curl, and the ice will tell you as the game goes on if it's going to be different.
Yeah.
So the skip has to be learning a lot throughout the game from both the players and the ice
Yeah.
about putting the broom in the right position as the first element to making a shot successful.
How much do you think is on a player themselves? So a non-skip. The third obviously has to pay attention a little bit. At the very least, they're watching two rocks come down the ice if they're not watching anything else over the course of the game. But lead seconds, which I play second with us on our team, I feel like I don't really get too much sense of the ice and what the curl's doing, even sweeping the rocks, because maybe if there's 4-foot lines, if you're in an arena with 4-foot lines, maybe, but without a 4-foot line, I find it, I just like, all right, broom's there, I'm going to try to hit it. So that's kind of my sense of it. But for you, how much do you think there's any responsibility on the part of the thrower to perhaps suggest ice if they feel it's wrong?
I think, as the game goes along and you've seen a few shots, then right at the beginning, I'd be like, well, what, do you want to come down here and do it? But but no, as the game goes on, and if a player knows as well that if they're not feeling as confident with a certain turn, then they might say, you know what, I've been really getting this turn started all night. Give me a little bit more ice, just in case. And in that sense, you want to listen to the player and listen to what they're experiencing in the house and as they throw. So in that is the time where I would be most open to hearing that. And if somebody says, hey, can you just give me a little more, then well, I'm not like an expert either, right? I'm just going on based on what I've been seeing. And one time, Sean, I was playing in Vancouver when I was younger, and somebody wanted more ice, and I said no. And they got really mad at me. It was my coach, and I was not skipping the next end.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So be receptive.
Yeah. I think one of the factors too, though, in terms of, again, at the rec level, if we're getting into the ranking side of it, how important the ice is the fact that I don't know how often I hit the broom. I'm in the neighborhood, but in terms of actually hitting it, it's really a toss-up.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But most people are pretty close.
Yeah.
And then if you don't hit it, then the odds of making a shot successfully if you don't hit the broom, pretty low, even if the broom is in the wrong spot, right?
Right.
So
all right. So as it sits now, though, of the things we've talked about, it is the most important because it's the only one we've talked about. So let's move on.
Default.
So the next part is the setup. And I'm framing the setup as in the hack. And there's a couple of things here, one of which I learned very recently, maybe within the last year or 18 months, that you're supposed to get into the hack from behind, which I had never heard that before, but I've never really did lessons. Never really had a coach. I would just pull the rock and get into the hack and be like, who cares? Like, whatever. So apparently you're supposed to get into the hack from the back, which I guess that matters for reasons. And then the idea, though, is that your hips face the target, because if your hips and maybe more your hips than your shoulders, but both sort of in conjunction, if they're square, if your hips are square to the target, when you kick out, you will go right towards the broom. So that's the idea, essentially, that you want your hips to the target. I've heard it said other ways that I'm not going to say on the show, but perhaps you've heard it in other ways.
Well, Sean, I've heard tummy to target.
Okay, belly. Yeah, if your belly button's facing the target, that's good. I like that. So that's the general idea. Your mid-body area facing the target. So in your sense, Scott, because you've had coaching before, how important is the setup to making a shot?
It's really important, Sean. When you go tummy to target, that's when you're standing behind the hack. And when you step into the hack, that should maintain that alignment. I always point my toe on the hack towards the broom. That's a little more subtle and not necessarily for everyone. I would say for the majority, it's probably good practice to do that, to have the toe pointing right at the broom when you're standing in the hack.
Yeah, but here's the thing, because again, I really care about pace of play. So if everybody waits till the broom's down to get into the hack, that's a pace of play problem.
Well, no, you should get into the hack, clean your rock, and then stand up, get the call from the skip, then you're down. Or, a lot of times, Sean, you know what the call is going to be,
shot
right?
is. Yeah, you know.
So you can do that pre-shot preparation.
Yeah.
Before. So
Okay.
I don't think it's that much time. If you're doing an arm,
the arm thing,
angle,
yeah.
Let's put this on Instagram.
Yeah. You're basically plumb bobbing.
Yeah,
the shot.
I don't think you need to do that. Like, if it's your technique, okay. But by making sure that your belly button is aligned towards the target and that your toe in the hack is pointing towards the broom, you should be good.
Yeah. All right, Scott. Now, is it more important than the ice? Is the setup a more important factor than where the broom is?
I'll say yeah. I think it's more important to be properly set up, square to the target. Because if you're not, it really, really reduces the likelihood that the shot is going to get made.
Yeah.
Vice, the broom being, a few inches off or something is less impactful. Do you agree?
No, I totally agree. I think the setup is very important, that you want to be going in that right direction, that you're going to have that squareness to the other end. Yeah, if the broom is off by an inch or two, like, you can still make the shot, especially at our level. So the setup, I think, is far more important. But then there's the next part. Once you are set up, ready to go, then you kick out of the hack. And I will say that if you're playing with a stick, I think it's the same general concept, sort of the momentum moving forward. So whether you're in the hack or you're playing with a stick, obviously this doesn't apply to the wheelchair game where you are stationary when you have to throw, and that is in the arms, and it's kind of all in the arms there. And with a stick, or when you're kicking out of the hack, it's a lot of legs involved in that. So let's talk about that part of it, Scott. The kick out and how important the kick out is on both hits and draws.
I think it's maybe the most important part of the delivery, in the sense that the kick is what dictates the weight for the most part. You can add, or I don't like taking off a little, because
it's much harder.
You pull the string, that's not great. But given the importance of weight on a shot, then the kick is the most important component of the weight. So perhaps you have a shot where the weight isn't that important. You want, a guard anywhere from just over the hog line to just in front of the house. Like, anywhere is fine on that center line. Then the kick is less important than it would be if you need to make a tap just through to the hack because you're navigating a small port.
Right.
So the importance of the kick, in my mind, is dependent on the importance of the weight to the shot.
Okay.
What's your thoughts?
So I think I mostly agree, but I would say it's not the most important component of the shot, because you can adjust. Again, it's not ideal to adjust, but if you're set up wrong, once you start, that's it. Whereas if you kick light, you can do a little bit of an ad with the arm. If you kick heavy, which, as you say, isn't great, one of the things that I do, which used to drive Megan mad, I would kind of like put pressure on the stone to kind of slow me down a bit, and then do a bit of an arm ad after that. I'm really more of a feel player, Scott. The times,
whatever works, Sean. Whatever.
Yeah,
works.
I'm very much a feel player. So to me, the kick, while yes, it's important because there are corrective measures you can take, I don't think it's as important, with the caveat that you don't want to be in a position where you have to take those corrective measures in the middle of the shot.
Right.
So they're available, but you don't want to use them. It's your break in case of emergency thing.
Yeah, that's true. It is like a bit of more margin for error.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're lined up totally wrong in the hack and you try to slide one way and your body is fishtailing, much more difficult to recover from than needing to add or take off a little bit.
Yeah. So in my mind, I would put the kick after setup, but ahead of ice.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I after as in below it in importance.
Yeah. So it's setup, kick, ice.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Then let's go to the one that confounds us all. The release.
The release.
Yes. The very release. We hear it all the time. Release sensitive ice. You got to get the release straight, or you were positive. You hooked it, whatever it is. There's lots of words to describe a poor release. So, Scott, one of the things that I remember being told at a curling club, and I don't really do this, but I teach it to people, like new people when they come try it. And I say, well, this is a good way to start, even though I don't think I really do this myself, is the handshake. That essentially, if you're right-handed, throwing an out turn, take the stone over to not quite 3 o'clock, between 2 and 3 o'clock. And as you let it go, just go from that position to extend your hand like you're going to shake the hand of a person at the other end of the ice. And for an in-turn for a right-handed player, start between 9 and 10 o'clock. And same thing, do the handshake release for a nice, clean, consistent release. That's what I heard. I say it to other people. Again, I'm a field player, which, okay, maybe not the greatest because I don't think I'm super consistent, even though I go inside out on the out turn. Nevertheless, that's how I, in my head, internalize a clean release. But Scott, what were you taught, and how do you consider, what do you consider a good clean release?
Yeah, I was also taught from 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock up to noon is how you want to go. So you started at 10 or 2, and as you slide out, you put the turn on it until it's at 12, and that way the handle is pointing straight and you can take your fingers off. And yeah, you want to be able to handshake somebody who would be standing at the hog line. I don't know if that's still the way that that is taught. Maybe someone can write in and let us know, given the importance of having more rotation on arena surfaces and that more clubs are having more and more curl. It's important, even at the club level, to have very positive rotation. You might even want to take it a little past 12, but I think when you're getting started, and for consistency, that 2 hours up to noon is sort of the best.
Now,
rule of
obviously, players, especially when you see on TV, do it very differently. I would say if you're learning, Shannon Burchard might not be the best model.
Yeah.
BJ Neufeld, maybe not the best model. I mean, they're obviously great players and they can do it, but I still don't understand how Shannon Burchard is able to get the rock out of her hand before the hog line, or how BJ Neufeld doesn't burn every stone he throws, but they managed to do it. But for a beginner, maybe not how you want to start with it. Scott, what's some of the weirdest releases that you've seen at the rec level?
There was one guy I used to play with who would like flick it. So rather than having a general release, would sort of come out and do all the rotation right at the very end. And I thought that was weird.
And that young man grew up to be Nicholas Sedin and made
the greatest
shot we've ever
all
seen.
Time. That one, I mean, I'm always confounded when people let the rock go very early.
Right.
I understand that, that's something you might have learned and are good at, and there's no reason that you can't be successful with it. but I always feel like, oh, the rock's already starting to curl by the time it hits the hog line, and that makes it a little tougher on the sweepers and on the skip calling the shot. So that's a little weird. Have you seen anything interesting in particular?
The only one that stands out to me, and I'm pretty sure this was somebody in Saskatchewan when I was there, most people, everyone, has the stone positioned so that where the handle, the part that you hold, is connected to the rest of the handle is away from you.
Yeah.
I have this recollection of somebody having it the reverse and holding the stone the other way.
That's really strange.
Yeah. I have this recollection. It might just be in my head, but I have that recollection of always being very perplexed by that.
Really could up your chances of burning the rock.
Yeah. And just the momentum of how you get that rotation. Like, you want it, the rotation becoming where the connection is strong between the handle that you're holding and the anyway. It's very strange.
I feel like I've seen that too, but not for a while.
Yeah. So, Scott, in terms of our ranking of what is the most important thing to make a shot, I think this goes to the top of the table. I think the release is the most important, because if you pull it out or if you dump it in, you don't have a chance.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. The release is the most important. You can have the perfect setup, the perfect kick, great speed, right on target. But yeah, if you play with it a little bit or just get it started early, it's not going to be good for the shot. So yeah, I'd take this to the top of the list.
Yeah, or the dreaded double touch.
Yeah, the double touch. Oof.
All right, now the next three kind of all happen at the same time, but I think there's still a sequential order to them. So let's go to the line call. Mm-hmm. This is usually the domain of the person in the house, but depending on the team dynamic, sometimes the person who throws it wants to have a more vocal part of it. I will say I'm guilty of this sometimes, and there was a moment this year where we actually had a spare with us, and I was skipping the Thursday team, and I wanted the team to sweep because I thought it was getting very close to a guard. He was calling them off because not only did he want to make the little run back we were trying, he wanted to roll off as to not give the other team that same run back. So we played it very close to the guard. Fortunately, the guys listened to him, and we made the way he envisioned it. Whereas if we made it the way I was calling it, we probably don't score that end. Instead, we stole a couple. But generally speaking, Scott, the rule is listen to the person in the house, even if it's the skip who's throwing the rock.
Yeah. Is
that you should listen to the person in the house. But one of the things about the line call that I think is underemphasized is preemptively sweeping, because on a lot of ice surfaces, once a rock starts to curl, especially on draws, it's gone and it's hard to save it. So again, as somebody who skips a lot at the rec level, how difficult is it to know exactly when to get people on the ice? Obviously, if the stone is in or out, then it's easy. But on one that's pretty well thrown at the broom, understanding that break point, how difficult is that?
I think it's very difficult for rec players to get the feel for that. It comes with just watching a lot of rocks, and sometimes I do find that there is like intuition for when it's going to curl, that sometimes I'll have more than my opponent, or my opponent will sometimes have more than me. And it just is, I've seen a couple down here. I know what it's going to do, and being very confident with it too. So even, I know we're passing the guard by, 3 feet, but I need you to sweep it because it is going to curl and it's going to finish in real nice. And we just need to get that distance to be able to get it all the way buried. Right. So, the line call I think is important, but I wouldn't put it as more important than the release, and I don't think I would put it more important than the leg kick.
Okay.
Or
So
what was the one
the
behind
setup was number 2.
the setup? Maybe the setup there. Actually, I don't think it's more important than the leg kick either.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the sweeping, especially at the rec level, where I think I'm a pretty good sweeper for the rec level, but I mean, we're not doing what the guys on TV can do.
No,
Like,
not at all.
I'm. You put me against Ben Hebert or Burchard
Gallant.
or Gallant or Caitlin Laws or
Yeah.
I could just basically name anybody on TV. They're
Yeah.
all going to do much, much better than me. So, and again, I think I'm a pretty good sweeper for the rec level. So at our level, the sweeping doesn't have the same impact as what you're going to see on TV. So with that being said, the line call, it's important, but maybe not as important. So the next one on the list, though, Scott, is the sweeping itself as opposed to the line call. So I just mentioned that I don't think the sweeping, it has an effect, no question.
Yeah.
And you can save a few here and there. But for the most part, it's not the same as what you're going to see on TV. So the question I have, where do you think the sweeping is more important at the rec level, on a hit or on a draw?
I think it's more important on a draw. I think being able to get it, I think good rec sweepers can take the rock probably 6 to 10 feet with their sweeping, depending, of course, how high it is. So yeah, like you could take a rock from top 12 foot and put it on the tee line just with sweeping.
Right.
As the only, like, I threw one. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I've swept some of your rocks. Yeah,
yeah.
I know what sometimes needs to be done.
So I've seen you do it. So there you go. I know it's possible. Yeah, I think it's much more important on a draw, on a hit. Like you say, we're not using those fabrics and sort of keeping it straight or carving it in quite to the level that we see on TV. So
sure,
I think there is like a little bit to it at the club level, but not as much as on TV.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that in a lot of rec leagues, the cheetah brooms are still allowed. Or at least if not allowed, nobody's really saying anything. Right? I don't use the mustard fabric. I no longer use a cheetah broom. And sadly, the broom that I had that wasn't necessarily a cheetah broom, but became a cheetah broom because I couldn't get a replacement part.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, that one no longer can help us make shots, because when I was using that, boy howdy, was sweeping and pour. That rocketed to the top of the list. But yeah, in this environment, if you're using the mustard official broom heads, it does compromise a little bit how effective you can be, especially on curl. At distance, maybe not as much, but certainly on curl.
Yeah.
So does this go along then with line call? I think sweeping might be a little more important than line call because it also speaks to weight.
Yeah, I'd put it ahead of line call because it does impact the weight, as you said. So yeah, like you can have a perfect line call.
Yeah.
But if the sweepers don't sweep it far enough because they didn't judge the weight properly, then that's more important to the final result of the shot than having a great line call.
Right. So as we sit now, Scott, going into our last factor, our list currently is the release, the setup, the kick, the sweeping, the line call, and then the broom, the ice. That's the list as we have it right now as we head to the last item, and that is the overall communication through the course of the shot. So this is encompassing the line call a little bit because obviously that is communication, but my thought here is mostly communication first from the thrower to the sweepers as the rock is let go. I think at our level, but you see it on TV as well, players will often say, oh, I added, or I held it back a little bit, or I dumped it out, or they'll make a comment about what they've done as they let the stone go.
They'll say, oh.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Like, ooh. Oh no.
Sweep, please.
Yikes. Yeah, so you hear that frequently. And then the communication from the sweepers down to the skip. What the weight is, what's going on with the stones. Scott, I know what I try to do as a sweeper when the rock is thrown and as it's going down the ice. But as the skip, what do you want in terms of communication from the other end of the ice as the stone is in motion?
Something. I want something. Like, especially on the draws, on the hits, less so. If we're trying to throw board weight and it's peel, then yeah, that's going to be important. But
Sure.
for the most part, it's like close enough.
Right.
But
that's an easy board.
heavy hack. Easy board, heavy hack.
Yeah,
in that range. But on the draws, I want to know, like, okay, if you're not sweeping it, I assume that it's heavy. But I also want to know, like, where do you think it's going to be? Because I'm always trying to plan B, plan C.
Sure.
And okay, if I know that it's back to like something in the back and we need to keep it on the line to be able to get there, then yeah, I'll have you sweep for line. But it's very hard to communicate all of that nuance back and forth, right? It has to be like, just trust the decision. I might say something like like plan B, or play the tick, or something, just to indicate to the sweepers that we're not going to make the shot as called, but there's something else that we can make. So listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's important too. And yeah, for the sweepers, one of the things that's really hard to do, I find, especially when I'm sparing, and on the rare occasions where I spare in like a cash league, and all the players are better than me, like one of the things that I find, if not intimidating, perhaps unnerving, is trying to call out weight when you just don't want to be wrong, like that's the thing that, and I know this, all skips will say just something is better than nothing.
Yes.
But as the person doing it, sometimes you just get in your head sometimes, right? Like if I call top 12 and it ends up back 4 foot, then I'm like, oh, I screwed up. And you get in your head, like no one else, like, yes, the skip would rather it be correct, but in your head, you're thinking, oh, they think I'm terrible and I'm awful, when they're like, oh, okay, a little heavier than expected. All right.
Well, but really what it is what you're guessing, and that's informing how you're sweeping, right? So you don't have to be right. I just need to know why you're not sweeping.
Right.
If it's going to be light. And if then it seems to me halfway down, like, are you sure? I'll go take a look.
Yeah.
Like, just to reconfirm. And what I teach young players, new players, is make a guess when they let it go, when the rocks let go. Make a guess. Say it out loud. Make a guess. Halfway down the ice, make another guess. It can be the same. It could be different based on what you're seeing. And then again at the far hog line, make a guess. Say something out loud, and then keep talking. And you kind of just get into the habit of talking and saying it, and eventually you'll be right, and then you'll be like, hey, I was pretty smart on that one.
Yeah.
So it gets in the habit, and yeah, like any information is better than nothing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, that for as much as I do enjoy playing with 3 when I'm the sweeper, and mostly it's because of the throwing side, I like throwing the extra stone, but it is harder when you're by yourself on the ice, in terms of judging weight and stuff, because you get 1 fewer rock to do at an end. You're only doing 5 instead of 6 over the course of the end. But when there's 2 people, you can kind of bounce off each other a little bit. And if it's 2 people, especially if you've played together for a while, you kind of get a sense of where everyone's at. And so I think that's a factor in it as well. And the other thing too, and I think this is important, that, and it's easier the longer you play together, or in some cases perhaps harder the longer you play together, is understanding how everybody else communicates. And one of the things for me, and you, probably more you than me, is there are moments over the course of a curling season where individuals can become quite animated in a moment of communication during the course. of a game, and just understanding whether or not that is actual anger or frustration, or if it's just excitement in the moment, or if it's just whatever it is, right? I've increased the number of panic calls that I've given now that I play third on Thursday nights. But part of the reason for the panic calls on occasion is simply so that the guys can hear me, because I feel that when you're down at the other end and the other players are kind of on top of you, and all the ends are coming in, or all the games are coming in the same direction, it feels a lot louder when you're close to everybody else. So sometimes I yell in a panicky way, not because I'm panicking, but merely because I don't know if they can hear me.
Yeah.
3/4 of the way down the ice. That's really sometimes what it is. So just kind of understanding motivations behind it, because the tone of a yell can sometimes sound aggressive without actually being aggressive. And I know that 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, you aren't actually mad.
No.
But
No,
sometimes you are.
I'm very rarely like legit angry. Sometimes I'm sort of like funny angry, like oh, come on guys, like you couldn't get it there, like, or what are you doing? But no, like never.
Yeah, I did get I think not legit, but kind of like peeved this year where we were drawing for a point. You only had to hit the paint, and Steph and I had to go post to post on it whole way. We barely get a biter, and we're at the hog line, the second hog line, and we've been going the whole way. I'm not sure if we're going to get it there. And then you start like really yelling, like, I'm like, shut up. Like, we're going as hard as we can. You're the one who threw it terribly. Like, leave me alone. Like, let me do my, like, so on that one, I was like, come on, man. What are we doing out here?
I feel like those ones are more of like me not wanting to be so embarrassed that I couldn't even hit the paint.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So communication, Scott, where does it rank for us? And again, just to tee us up here, it is the last one.
Yeah.
So currently our order is release, setup, kick, sweep, line, and the ice.
I want to put it number one, but if you can have perfect communication, and if you dump something with a bad turn, then it doesn't matter, right? If your communication's bad. What's the one after the second one? Release.
So it goes release, setup, kick. And this is where I would actually put it. I would put it between the kick and the sweep, because I don't think you can have good sweeping without good communication, but I don't think the communication is necessarily as important as the kick.
Yeah, I if you could add to the communication part, communication of the weight.
Yeah, the shot, which I am. Yeah.
So that part I think is as important as the kick, because if you don't know that, you can't kick properly.
Sure.
So I might put it above the kick, but either one is fine.
All right. Well, then, since you say either one is fine, and I have the list in front of me, it's going after kick.
Okay.
All right. So our final list of the factors that go into making a shot in terms of importance are release, then the setup, then your kick out the hack, communication, the sweeping, the line call, and then putting the broom down, the ice that you give. Those are our factors making a shot. If you do all 7 of those, going to make the shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that might also be a thing to practice, right? If you're going to practice something, maybe prioritize using that list and see what happens. I think that's the way to go. Yeah,
because one of the things too that you often find this with people who practice, you'll go and you'll just throw, and not that's necessarily wrong, but you want to go and have a specific thing. You want to be working on something. You want to be doing drills and not just trying to say draw the button all the time. You want to go out, have a specific task in mind. So whether it's setting up so that, you see this oftentimes as a drill, you put out 2 stones and say, I want to slide between the stones. Yeah. And you maybe don't even let the rock go. Like, you just work on that in terms of setup. and then release. You can practice release just in the hack without doing anything, without kicking out. You can just practice your release that way. So there's ways to do that. Communication, hell, it's summer. Go to a patio with the people you play with. That can be a way to practice your communication. Hang out. So there's a lot of things that you can do that you can practice for all these things. So that is our list. It might give you something to do over the summer when you get back into the arena, or if you're playing now in a summer league, might be helping you now. So that is what we got for you this week. If we missed any out, do let us know. If you don't like those rankings, you can also let us know about it on social media at Game of Stones Pod on Twitter and Instagram, Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. You can also head over to GameofStonesPod.com. Past episodes are there, plus a link to the merch if you want to check out some of the things we got going on. A wide variety of colors are now available through the merch on the shirts and such. So more options than there were before. So if you want to go over, check that out. And of course, as always, do subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, likes, rates, comments, all that good stuff. Helps us grow the show, helps other people find us. Scott, we are about to turn the calendar here into July. It's almost Canada Day. Any Canada Day traditions?
Well, Sean, we do live in Ottawa, and Canada Day in Ottawa is typically, a big festivity. Lots of fireworks and performances and learning opportunities around town. So that's always good if you are in a place such as that. Watching fireworks, I think, is the probably biggest Canadian tradition for Canada Day. Although I don't know if they do fireworks in as many places anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. They're expensive.
Yeah.
And with the fires going on, it's
you
maybe not
don't
safe
in
a lot of the country right now.
Don't want to burn anything. So, what about you, Sean? What do you do on Canada Day?
As much as possible, I like to leave this beautiful country
Ottawa.
of ours.
Yeah.
So a few times I've managed to get out of town, especially when it's a long weekend. That is the plan this long weekend as well. Head down south and watch some baseball, some minor league baseball. So
baseball on Canada Day is always good. I think last year you came over here and we watched the Blue Jays game, had a barbecue.
Did that.
Had a good relaxing day. So have a good time down south watching baseball.
Thank you. And you as well. And happy Canada Day to everybody out there. As Scott said, a chance to celebrate, but also to reflect. There are a lot of great resources. There's always a good chance, or always a good opportunity to check out the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the folks out there at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation out there in Winnipeg. So always a good chance to reflect on the totality of the nation and its history. So I encourage everybody to take a moment to do that. And for our friends down in the United States, happy 4th of July to you. And same thing about a lot of the Centers for Information in the United States. It's, always great to be proud of where you're from, but it's also great to understand sort of the totality of where you're from's history. So that's the historian me, encouraging everybody to celebrate safely, happily, and take an opportunity to reflect and learn a little bit about these wonderful places that we call home. So with that, we will bid you well. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with you again next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice, but don't dump that intern.
Make the final.